The audacious theft of the CSS Planter. Imagine a man born into the chains of slavery, standing on the deck of a Confederate warship in the heart of the Civil War. He doesn't have an army. He doesn't have a map. All he has is a straw hat, a stolen captain's uniform, and a plan so suicidal that even the bravest generals called it impossible. This is the story of how one man steered a ship of war out of the jaws of the Confederacy and into the pages of legend. The Harbor of Shadows. The humid air of Charleston, South Carolina in May 1862 felt like a wet wool blanket soaked in salt and gunpowder. In the pre-dawn darkness, the harbor was a forest of masts and the skeletal silhouettes of ironclads. For the Union blockade ships waiting miles out at sea, Charleston was a fortress of rebellion. For Robert Smalls, it was a prison with a very specific exit strategy. Robert stood on the deck of the CSS Planter, a high-pressure side-wheel steamer. He was 32 years old, with shoulders broadened by years of hauling cotton and eyes that had seen the brutal math of the slave auctions. He was an expert pilot, though the Confederate Navy would never grant him the title because of the color of his skin. To them, he was equipment. To the ship's captain, C.J. Relea, Robert was the man who knew the sandbars and secret channels better than any white officer on the coast. That night, the white officers had done something they weren't supposed to do. They went ashore to party, leaving the ship in the hands of the enslaved crew. "Robert," a voice whispered from the shadows of the galley. It was John Smalls, another crewman. "The guards at Fort Sumter, they'll blow us out of the water before we hit the first swell." Robert didn't look back. He was staring at the captain's stateroom. "They only see what they expect to see, John, and tonight they expect to see Captain Relea." Robert reached into a bag he had smuggled aboard days prior. He pulled out the captain's distinctive wide-brimmed straw hat and a heavy naval overcoat. When he put them on and stood in the dim light of the lantern, his silhouette was a perfect match for the man who claimed to own him. The Midnight Gamble. At 3 a.m., the boiler was hissing. The crew, 7 enslaved men, along with 5 women and 3 children, including Robert's wife Hannah and their 2 youngsters, who had been hidden in a nearby wharf, crept aboard. The stakes were binary: absolute freedom or public execution. "Cast off," Robert commanded, his voice low and steady. The planter backed away from Southern Wharf. To reach the open ocean, they had to pass 5 Confederate forts. Each one was bristling with cannons that could splinter the wooden steamer in seconds. As they approached Fort Johnson, Robert pulled the cord for the ship's whistle. 2 long blasts, 1 short, the secret Confederate signal. From the ramparts of the fort, a sentry looked down. He saw the familiar shape of the planter. He saw the captain's straw hat and the casual, confident posture of the man at the wheel. The sentry waved his hand. "Pass, planter," he shouted. Hannah gripped the children in the hold, her breath hitching. They were halfway there, but the final boss remained: Fort Sumter, the Gibraltar of the South. The shadow of Sumter. As the sun began to bleed a deep orange over the Atlantic, the massive walls of Fort Sumter loomed. This was the spot where the war had begun. The guns here were the finest in the South. Robert slowed the engines. If he went too fast, it looked like a desertion. If he went too slow, it looked like hesitation. He leaned against the window of the pilot house, crossing his arms exactly the way Captain Relea did. He blew the whistle again. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. The crew held their breath. Then the signal came back from the fort: permission to pass. As the planter moved beyond the range of Fort Sumter's guns, Robert didn't jump for joy. He didn't cheer. He waited until they were exactly out of range. Then he shouted, "Open her up." The steamer surged forward. The Confederate flag was ripped down, and a white bedsheet was hoisted up the mast. The meeting with the North. Miles out, the USS Onward saw a Confederate ship charging towards them. "Clear the guns," the Union captain yelled. "Target that steamer." The Union sailors watched as the strange ship approached. Just as they were about to pull the lanyards to fire, a sailor yelled, "Wait! Look at the flag! It's a sheet!" As the planter pulled alongside the massive Union warship, Robert Smalls stepped to the railing. He took off the straw hat, looked up at the Union officers, and shouted, "I am bringing you some of the Confederate secrets and these guns."